On today's episode of Locked On Suns, Shams Charania of The Athletic reported this week that the Phoenix Suns are expected to offer up not only their 2024 draft pick, but their 2031 draft pick as well as they look to upgrade the roster around the Big Three this offseason. What could a trade look like, and should they go that all in? Yet again, we'll break it down. Let's go.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And we are back. This is Locked On Phoenix Suns. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Brendon Kleen, a credentialed media member covering the Suns for the past 7 seasons and the host of the Just Basketball Show, wherever you get your podcast. Thank you for making Locked On Suns your first listen to kick off your Wednesday. The offseason keeps rolling, and we're here for you every day. Just hit follow or subscribe wherever you're finding us. We are free and available everywhere, including YouTube. When you hit that button, you get a new episode in your feed every single Monday through Friday throughout the offseason and beyond. Become an everydayer. Get locked on to the Phoenix Suns right here with me and the community of thousands of Suns fans who are here locked in all the time. All right. So Shams Charania went on Pat McAfee's show on this week and basically said what we were all thinking. The Suns are going to explore trades. They're going to shop both of their picks. That's the 22nd pick in the 2024 draft this year, which they have their own pick in because they didn't have to swap it, and the 2031 pick that is now going to be available to them because now that we're in the 2024 offseason, they get a pick 7 years out, and they haven't traded it yet, so it's in their stash. The picks will both become available to be traded on draft night, but of course, they have between now and then to negotiate and plan it out and talk to teams. So there's a few options, right? One, shout out to Shams for being one of the only NBA reporters I think that can get this straight, and it's worth remembering even ourselves here as people who care about the team is they do have draft picks, all right? This year, it's not just a fluke or some random coincidence or, we left 2024 out for some reason, No, they get this pick because it is one of the years where all they gave up in the Durant trade was a swap. They gave up some swaps in the Beal trade as well, but the years when you have a swap, you still have a pick. So keep that in mind. They can't trade those picks on those swap years until the draft comes along because then they would be trading multiple picks in a row. But every other summer, the Suns will have a draft pick up until 2030, at which point, as of right now, they have all their picks beyond that year. Okay, so I know it's a little complicated, but when you keep hearing the Suns have no picks, and then all of a sudden here they are in June of this year about to make a pick, or at least have a pick at their disposal, it gets a little complicated. So let's actually make it less complicated by getting that detail straight. And then let's talk about what the options look like, okay? The Suns cannot combine salaries together in a trade. So that means if you want to trade the 22nd pick this year, you cannot say Nurkic plus Nassir Little plus the 22nd pick. It has to be one of those people. Okay? Beyond that, we're also looking at, you cannot take more money in than you give up. So the Suns cannot say take, what they did with the Ayton trade, or even what they did with the Royce O'Neal trade. Now that we are in this 2024 offseason, a few new rules have been introduced, which are most teams can take back a lot more than they send out, even if they're in the luxury tax. For this past season, when the Suns were in the second apron of the new financial situation under the new CBA, they could take back 110% of what they were sending out, and that's they took advantage of that in the Ayton trade and the Royce O'Neal trade. Now, the maximum that they can receive in a trade is exactly what they're sending out. So you have to be receiving less than or equal to what you're sending. So that complicates it more. But let's talk about what I think will be their priority number one ahead of the draft, which is to combine that 22nd pick with Jusuf Nurkic and his $16.7 million salary. I'll confirm that number. I'm pretty positive that's true. I get it mixed up with Nassir Little, who we'll talk about in the next segment. He's at $6.3 million. Nurkic is at $16.9 million. And that would allow the Suns to basically say, here's a pick. Here is a player with 2 years left on his contract. Beyond this one, although the $16.9 million was his contract this past season, that's what he counts as up until July 1st when the new league year starts. He'll cost you roughly $37 million. We know that's not great. He's probably not, a high-level starting caliber player for every team. But in return, you're getting the pick to make up for it, and you give us somebody that we want a little more. And the way that I would categorize these types of players is teams, I guess, teams that need a center or contract dumps. All right, so you're probably not going to love a lot of the names you hear, but that's because a lot of other teams aren't going to love the Nurkic concept. You're dealing from a point of weakness. That's what the Suns are dealing with, just like they did last offseason. Okay, so I'm just going to run through the names, and I'm going to give you if I think they're likely or less likely. Karis LeVert from Cleveland. I could definitely see it. They might move on from Jared Allen. Nurkic, depending on what their team looks like, could play a similar role to what he did for the Suns with their perimeter scoring and, what Evan Mobley is for them and everything else. Maybe a backup, maybe a starter, whatever. Norman Powell in LA, the Clippers have three centers, but Plumlee and Tice are both free agents, and if they really, want to just invest in that position and have size, Powell is important to them, but plays the same position as a lot of their best players. Brandon Clark, undersized for what the Suns might be looking for, coming off of an Achilles, but he has a lot of the things that they didn't have, which would be a much, much better version of what they wanted Eubanks to provide for them. Mitchell Robinson in New York. I think this one is not super likely, but Hartenstein is a free agent. I'm assuming they'll spend whatever it takes to bring him back, but maybe, they want more continuity in terms of style from their center position. Nurkic is a little more similar to Hartenstein. Robinson is injury prone, as we're seeing. He just had ankle surgery, and he just came back from an injury not too long before that. Harrison Barnes and Kevin Huerter in Sacramento. I would say Huerter is a little more likely. I think Sacramento in general, not the best bet to say that, they're going to spend another 20 or so million in the form of Nurkic on their center position, given that they're paying Sabonis close to his max. It's a lot of money to pay the backup to your best player, or one of. But Huerter got hurt, wasn't having a great season. Maybe they just want to move off of him and shuffle things around. Suns would really benefit from a Kevin Huerter. Zach Collins from San Antonio. I actually think San Antonio makes a lot of sense for Nurkic. The problem is they don't have a lot of salary in general because they're such a young team. You're not getting their best of the best players. Collins isn't filling much of a need for the Suns, all things considered, but he makes a little less than Nurkic, and I could see the Spurs maybe giving the Suns 35. They have the 35th pick in this year's draft. Maybe that equals out the value a little bit. The Suns can still make a pick at 35. Maybe draft another young center there. Colin Sexton and Jordan Clarkson in Utah, I don't really see it unless they're just done with the whole idea of those guys, but they did lose Kelly Olynyk in a trade. They're always down to take on more first-round picks, it seems like. Clarkson probably more likely than Sexton if they're just saying, Clarkson's been great for us, but it doesn't make sense to have a veteran scorer here anymore as we're trying to turn the page into a new chapter for our team. Grant Williams from the Hornets, he just got traded. He was starting at center for them and played much better in Charlotte than he did in Dallas, but, he's good for their defensive floor. He's good for, playmaking and shooting and just kind of making you a normal team, which they could really benefit from as they're rebuilding. But I don't think it would be crazy, and they've liked to have, whole new brain trust there, but LaMelo Ball has played well with dribble handoff playmakers in the past. He was really solid with Mason Plumlee, with PJ Washington. I could see Nurkic being a solid fit there, but, how do they see the value shaking out? And again, is Nurkic really somebody they want to go after? So that's the more expensive. That's the teams that could use some center depth, or teams that have their own iffy salaries that they might want to get off of, and the Suns could say, hey, let's sweeten it up. Here's the 22nd pick, and there you go. But again, who's the best name on that list? Norman Powell? I mean, Colin Sexton's the best name on that list, but I don't think that's very likely. Mitchell Robinson, how many minutes are you really getting out of him? Can he make it through a full season? Grant Williams, are you getting, are you getting a guy that's going to fit in the locker room? That's been an open question. I think there's a much more easy path to a trade with Nassir Little because he makes less money, which opens you up to unwanted veterans or second draft young bets. Guys that you're just, as the Suns, going to say, that guy's going to be better here. Similar to what they did with some of their minimum signings last year, but a little better players because, of course, they're making more money. So let's get to those trade options coming up next. First, today's show brought to you by Betterhelp, one of my favorite sponsors. We all carry around different stressors, big and small. When we keep them bottled up, it can start to affect us negatively, and therapy is a safe space to get things off your chest and figure out how to work through whatever's weighing you down. I personally have been in therapy for, intermittently for a few years now, but consecutively for 6-7 months now, and it's been really helpful. It doesn't have to be this thing happens and you end up at therapy, or this major problem is going on and you got to get in immediately. It can be just a balance. It can be there for you with people, a therapist who isn't a part of your life, but is just an unbiased person to bounce things off of and treat whatever is going on. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. Entirely online, designed to be flexible, convenient, and suited to your schedule. All you have to do to get started is fill out a brief questionnaire, get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch at any time for no additional charge until you find the perfect partner for yourself. Get it off your chest with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA to try it out and get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. Keeping the show rolling, let's jump to Nassir Little trades, all right? And so to refresh, as I mentioned in the last segment, his salary up until July 1st, so if you're talking about a draft day trade, is $6.3 million, okay? And he's under contract for 4 more seasons, 3 after this one. And look, it didn't really work out in Phoenix until his jumper and his offensive feel and his decision-making and processing of the game gets to another level. He's going to be a hit-or-miss type of player, but he is still only 24. He's on a reasonable contract. His athleticism is obviously very, very high level. I don't think he has a ton of shots left in the league, if I'm being honest, but hey, we've seen guys benefit from multiple stops and multiple different roles and finally click. So I could see a team at least saying, hey, that's a player we could try out. But again, the point here is you're looking for teams with other guys from financial reasons or development reasons that they don't want, or players who are kind of like Nassir Little, meaning that they haven't really panned out for their team. So I have a lot more names here, and I'll just do the same thing I did last segment. Why I think they might be available and how likely I think it is that they could get moved. Again, you're also talking about the 22nd overall pick, so it's not just Nassir Little and whether the team thinks that they could get something out of him. It's, is the difference between the player you're acquiring and what they would be getting with Nassir equivalent to the 22nd pick? And is that first-round pick enough to convince another team to take on Little, and maybe you get the better player in the deal if you're the Suns? Obviously, you should be. All right, so in Atlanta, Kobe Buffkin, it's the guy they just drafted. AJ Griffin the year before that. I think both guards, a young guard with shooting ability and potential, like the Suns should be signing up for any of those they can get their hands on. I just put them in here because I'm not sure what Atlanta's plans are. They just got the number 1 overall pick. They want to win with Quinn Snyder and Trae Young, but, does this change their plans? And could some of their players be on the move? Peyton Pritchard in Boston. I mean, if the Suns could walk out of this offseason with Peyton Pritchard in some way, shape, or form, they'd be, doing a massive victory lap. I don't think the Celtics are just going to give him away. Boston is in win now mode. They have no need for the 22nd overall pick, so I don't think this one is terribly likely. But hey, if they flame out in some way, shape, or form and bigger changes get made, maybe Pritchard doesn't make as much sense, and that type of player is what they have the most of in the form of not only White and Holiday, but Brown and Tatum do kind of the same stuff as creators on offense too. So I could see it, not the top likelihood. Nick Richards, again, if the Suns could walk out of this offseason with Nick Richards in a trade, I think that they would be absolutely stoked. I think this is one where the value might not perfectly line up, so maybe you're talking about a second-round pick coming back to the Suns. Charlotte has 42. Could you do 22 and Little for Nick Richards and 42, and you get another pick at 42, and maybe you actually keep that guy? I could see it. Javon Carter in Chicago, I mean, to me, that's a no-brainer. The Bulls should be in reset mode. Carter's a great Chicago-type guy. Obviously, for him, that's basically home, and they're not trying to lose games, but if they could get a first-round pick for him, I think they'd consider it. He's undersized. We know what his limitations are. He's become a much better shooter since leaving the Suns, and he would help their point-of-attack defense. So, I think it'd be a nice fit. Dean Wade in Cleveland, very, very high-level 3-and-D forward-type guy. Gets injured a lot. Not the most consistent, but if Cleveland makes broader changes, we don't know what they're going to do this offseason. I think he could be available, and they might like to have that pick too and get somebody younger in the door. Zeke Naji in Denver, I'm not really convinced if this guy's an NBA player or not. I was skeptical when he was at the University of Arizona. He hasn't really been able to slide into their rotation much over the course of his career, but hey, it's a center option, and the Suns could use those. Jalen Smith in Indiana, hello darkness, my old friend. I don't mean any shots at Jalen Smith. I just mean for Suns fans, that would be a little humiliating, but hey, he is another big man option, and he's benched in the playoffs right now. I don't think it's a high upside type of deal, but hey, he's a player. Zaire Williams, John Conchar, and Santi Aldama in Memphis. I don't think Conchar is good enough to be worth a first-round pick personally. Memphis doesn't really have that type of second-round pick that you could get back from them. They actually only have the Suns' second-round pick this year, which is 57. Not anything too special there. Or I guess it's Denver's technically, but the Suns gave it to him. So I'm not sure there's a trade to be had there, unless the Suns were just really high on Zaire or Aldama. I think Aldama turned into a really, really nice kind of 3-and-D forward, similar, frankly, to what Dean Wade is, except he's, I don't know, actually they're pretty similar players. Aldama might be a little bigger, but maybe that's there. I wouldn't hate any of those. Zaire Williams, I still believe in. He's a little scrawny, but hey, there you go. Could just be an improvement on what KBD and Nas were supposed to be for the Suns last year. Milwaukee, Marjon Beauchamp, Doc Rivers, and Adrian Griffin, frankly, didn't really seem to believe in this guy, but I think his talent's there. He has size. He has strength to his game. He's made the three in spurts throughout his career. I think he'd be worth a buy low on. Maybe another one of those where are you getting another pick back? Milwaukee has 33. Davion Mitchell, I'm still uncertain about his offensive game, but point-of-attack defense is a big need for the Suns, and he would fill it. Jalen McDaniels in Toronto, I don't think he's good enough, but he's in the salary range, and maybe you could work out a broader trade. Ochai Agbaji, though, with the Raptors, I think does make more sense. I've always compared him to, maybe a little bit of a better defensive Malik Beasley, somebody with a quick trigger on offense whose game is primarily based on jumpers. I think his defensive ability, maybe just because he's younger, is a little better than Malik Beasley's. But honestly, even if the Suns had Malik Beasley, he'd probably be getting minutes. So you're talking about a higher upside version of that guy. Hey, why not? Corey Kispert in Washington, last one. People will know who that guy is. Longtime Gonzaga player, has turned into a sharpshooter in the NBA, brings size at the very least. You could see Mike Budenholzer's offense with what he did with Kyle Korver, what he's done with various shooters throughout his time in the NBA. you could see him drawing up some fun stuff for Kispert as a movement shooter, somebody who can really bend the defense off the ball rather than just being stationary in a spot-up type of capacity, which is really what Eric Gordon was, what Grayson Allen is. The Suns don't have that outside of Booker and Durant, and Beal, frankly, but none of them were really doing it, and they have to have the ball, so Kispert could help there. As far as my favorite options go here, I guess I would say, Pritchard would be great. Not very likely. I think Nick Richards as a starting caliber option for the Suns would really plug a hole. Is it worth the overpay? Could you get something else in a trade like that? I think he could make sense. I like Dean Wade. I like Santi Aldama as just forwards with size who are vets and can shoot. And then there's some younger upside plays. Zaire Williams, Marjon Beauchamp, Ochai Agbaji, AJ Griffin, frankly. I think all those guys have talent, but, are you running into a situation where you're placing too much pressure and too much of your hopes for the season on young guys to get better? You kind of want to know what you got. So we'll see. Those are the only names that's my first shot at it for both Nurkic and Little trades. But point is, whichever route they go there's options. And I think if the Suns were to get any of the top 3, 4, 5 players on either of those lists, we would feel pretty good. Hey, they got another rotation player. Now, with Nurkic, you're getting rid of a rotation player. You got to feel like you're getting an upgrade. With Little, there's no rotation player, which again, with Little, he wasn't playing. He was not a rotation player for this team, is what I'm saying. So it's not quite the same level of, I guess, need to nail it. If you're giving up a pick and a guy who wasn't playing and you get back a guy who is going to play, again, that's why I think the Little side of it is maybe the most likely. However, the Suns also have the 31 pick at their disposal starting on draft night. So let's take a look at what recent trades for both 31 and other first-round pick draft night types of trades have looked like in the past, to think about what the Suns might be able to do with that far, far, far away pick coming up this summer. We'll talk about that next. First, today's show brought to you by the Gametime app. Gametime is an authorized ticket marketplace of the NBA, which makes getting playoff tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off. So, maybe if you're still feeling all right about the NBA postseason, which I'm still loving all of it, you could go to Denver. See one of those matchups, or Dallas. Maybe you go to Oklahoma City. I'm not necessarily recommending it, but, you could get a little deal. Maybe Gametime makes it worth your while. Tickets probably a little more reasonable for the Thunder. I don't know, maybe we'll see. But what I love most about Gametime is, in addition to being that authorized ticket marketplace, they have all of the info in one place, including all-in pricing, where you see the total up front, as well as seat views, meaning you get a panoramic view, a picture, a visual of what you are going to be looking out at when you go to the game, all from that first screen. So you're able to see, hey, I'm going to have this thing in my way, or I'm going to have this angle. I love that. You also, again, have those prices right up front. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Closing out the show. So, there were 2 trades last season. Last deadline, both of them actually, where we saw teams trade their far out draft picks for difference-making players. Now, in both cases, the Lakers and the Mavs, we saw those trades involve aggregated salaries. And remember, the Suns can't do that. So the Suns can't trade Nurkic plus Little plus this year's pick plus the 31 pick. If you're doing all that, I would tell you could probably get a pretty darn good player. Unfortunately, the Suns cannot do that. Now, they can trade both picks together, so you could go Nurkic, the 2024 first-round pick, and the 2031 first-round pick, and get probably a better player than anybody I listed off in that first segment of the show. But who is that, and how likely are the Suns to really put all their chips on the table in that way? I guess that's the question. But to go back to the deals we did see, the Lakers traded Russell Westbrook plus a couple salaries, plus their 2027 first-round pick at last year's deadline, the 2023 deadline, of course, for D'Angelo Russell, Jared Vanderbilt, and Malik Beasley. Dallas, right before the Suns got Durant, of course, traded Spencer Dinwiddie, Dorian Finney-Smith, and their 2029 first-round pick for Kyrie Irving. So, if you have the salary and you're willing to trade a very far-out pick with limited protections, I believe the Mavs pick was unprotected, and I believe the Lakers pick was top 4 protected, you can get some pretty good stuff. Obviously, Kyrie is much more desirable, but hey, the Lakers had to give up Westbrook, so that provided some negative value they had to counteract, and they only end up with some basically role players in their deal. But hey, better than nothing. So those are some of the options. We also saw at this year's deadline, the 2024 trade deadline, a couple of other trades that inform what this could look like as well. Dallas, again, traded Rashawn Holmes and their 2027 first-round pick for Daniel Gafford. The Miami Heat traded Kyle Lowry and their 2027 first-round pick for Terry Rozier. And if we even rewind beyond that, we saw the Celtics trade salary. Now, they, again, aggregated that salary, but let's just call it salary, which is really what the Suns would be doing too. And a 2023 first-round pick, 2022, ahead of that year's draft for Malcolm Brogdon. Of course, the year before that, the Suns were involved in a trade like this when they traded Javon Carter and a 2021 first-round pick for Landry Shamet ahead of the draft. So some of those are more in the this year's pick plus Nurkic or this year's pick plus Little kind of category. Some of those are in the, hey, let's include the 2031 pick type of category. I kind of throw that all out there just to show you the range of types of players that you can get and what those deals look like, and also just as a reminder that those deals do exist. Now, the Suns probably are not getting somebody to the caliber of Kyrie Irving because they don't have a Dorian Finney-Smith to trade, and they can't combine salaries, as I've said a bunch of times now. So you're really talking about, hey, D'Angelo Russell, Malcolm Brogdon, Terry Rozier, Daniel Gafford. You're talking about whether it's this year's pick or it's including that future pick, you're getting a role player or a starter. That's that's where it's going to cap out. The Suns are not getting another high-level starter. They're not getting their version of OG Anunoby or Pascal Siakam to add to the group, But they can get a six-man or a fifth starter would probably be the right way to think about it. And considering, again, that if they were able to do that with Nassir Little's salary in particular, let's say they can get a Peyton Pritchard. You're just manufacturing another rotation player. That's exactly why the Suns are considering it. That's a big get. I would say this year, obviously Grayson Allen got hurt, but the Suns were working with 7 rotation players that they even trusted to play real minutes. So if you're just taking that from 7 to 8 at the price of one draft pick, I think you feel pretty good. If you are getting a big improvement on what is probably your weakest position right now, which is center, you're probably feeling pretty good. Now, again, who is that? I'm not convinced that's really there, but maybe you can turn that into an upgrade at a different position and get a different center a different way. There's a whole bunch of permutations here, but I think you would feel pretty good if you could somehow get that very much better center. You re-sign Royce O'Neal, you get a major upgrade at one of those spots, or you just add a rotation player. I think that's enough to say, hey, we improved the team. New coach, maybe develop things a little better, get a G League squad going next year and start to get some player development working. I think, you come out of the summer feeling, hey, we did something. We improved the team. If you're James Jones, if you're Matt Ishbia, you can tell yourself that and feel good about it. Now, I've said I think there's a good amount of logic to keeping the pick. But I don't know this draft. I don't know what players are going to be able to come in and contribute. And so it's hard for me to say that and feel great about it. But I guess the point to wrap is that if you're going to trade this pick, you got to feel like it's enough of a home run beyond the stability and the upside that a first-round caliber player could provide for you, that it's worth doing. So that's why as I'm going through these lists, I'm kind of saying no, like I don't think a Davion Mitchell or even frankly like a Corey Kispert, Javon Carter is quite good enough. I don't think, Kevin Huerter or Zach Collins and maybe even Grant Williams are really good enough. You got to be sure that it's going to be fast forward to next June, next May, next April in the playoffs. Is that player going to make you feel better about your odds to win a series, win a championship than what you have right now? If you say yes and you're not taking crazy pills, I think you go for it. If you don't love the options and you feel like there's not a major upgrade available to you, you take the pick. You take a player there and you just bet on that guy either becoming a trade piece down the line or maybe he's the missing piece instead of a vet. It sounds crazy. It's not. Rookies contribute on good teams every year. It happens. And Ben Shepherd's playing for the Pacers. You go through, the Nuggets have young Christian Brown last year. The Thunder have, Chet, you can say, but Kassan Wallace is a rookie. The Mavs have Derek Lively. It happens every year. You can get those guys too. So it's not always a sure thing that a vet is going to be more likely to contribute than a rookie. Even though you feel better about it, reality might tell you something different. That'll wrap us up. Lots to chew on. 5 weeks until the draft. We'll get into some of the prospects and players as we go. We will hear more rumors. We will hear more reports. And I will try to learn who these guys actually are so that I'm not talking out of my you-know-what. Hit follow or subscribe. Get all those shows and more throughout the off season right here. I'll talk to you guys next time.